Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of UPSC examination. Today we have taken up the Hindu New Delhi edition dated 14th March 2023. Topics for today's discussion are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. So the first topic of today's discussion is inspired from this news which featured on page number 5 of the Hindu newspaper. Now recently in NGT, that is National Green Tribunal, had appointed a committee to investigate into matters of fire incidents at the Brahmapuram dump site in the city of Kochi in state of Kerala. Now this committee has held Kochi Corporation responsible for these fire incidences. Now the topic of NGT is pretty much important from the perspective of UPSC examination. As if we look into the GS paper 2 syllabus, the quasi-judicial bodies have been explicitly mentioned. As well as in General Studies paper 3, the conservation, environmental pollution and degradation and environmental impact assessment and issues related to it have been mentioned. Now further, the topic and the institution of NGT is pretty much important from the perspective of preliminary examination also. As in 2018, UPSC has asked a question based on comparative analysis between NGT and Central Pollution Control Board, that is CPCB. Now try to attempt this question and let us know your answer in the comment box given below. Now National Green Tribunal, that is NGT, has been established under the National Green Tribunal Act of 2010 for the effective and expeditious disposal of cases relating to environmental protection and conservation of forests and other natural resources, including enforcement of any legal right relating to environment and giving relief and compensation for damages to persons and property. Now in this discussion, we will discuss why NGT was created at first place. Secondly, we will also look into the features and composition of NGT. Then we will look into the challenges pertaining to the working and power of NGT, and we will discuss some way forward or suggestion for the same. So let us now begin our discussion. So to start with, we must look into the rationale behind the establishment of NGT. The first reason was increasing level of complexities related to environmental litigation. Now, environmental litigations are not similar to that of civil or criminal cases, where you can hold a person or a group of persons or an identified entity responsible for any event. Here, plethora of factors get involved which results into occurrence of any environmental issue or disaster. For example, if there is a case of flood and subsequent ill effects to the population which is residing at the embankments, who can be held responsible for this? One must have the knowledge of entire river regime to understand the case in its true essence. Apart from this, it also involves irregularities on part of citizens living there, as well as irregularities on part of the corporation or the administrative unit which is responsible for the care of those embankments. And due to this rising complexities, we need expertise for the adjudication of such litigations. As you know, our courts are more versed with the cases related to CRPC and IPC. So there is a need of domain-specific expertise to solve environmental litigation or to adjudicate the matters related to environmental litigation. Another reason why it was established is the rigidity imposed by the existing court system. As you know, our court system is more versed with the cases related to the civil and criminal procedure, and they follow a set procedure that has been established in the Constitution. They seldom go beyond this procedural codes that have been mentioned. However, issues related to environment requires a broader spectrum to be covered, and this rigidity does not work. And you will see further that in NGT Act 2010, it has been mentioned that NGT shall be guided by principle of natural justice. Another important reason why NGT was established was the higher pendency in judiciary so that the process of expedition of environmental litigation can be achieved. So what has been ensured through the establishment of NGT? First is dedicated courts for environmental matters which are based on expertise. Second is the time-bound disposal of important cases. As you know that through the NGT Act 2010, it has been mandated to make endeavor for disposal of application within 6 months of filing. It has brought specialization in the adjudication of matters related to environmental issues. Apart from this, the multiple acts that it covers ensures the wider reach of the NGT. Now, before moving on to the features and composition of the NGT, let us look into the benches, that is presence of NGT in India. The tribunal has a presence in 5 zones, namely North, East, South, West and Central. The principal bench is situated in North Zone, headquartered in New Delhi, while Eastern Zone headquarter is in Kolkata, Southern Zone headquarter is in Chennai, Pune is Western Zone's headquarter, while Bhopal is the Central Zone's headquarter. Now the tribunal is headed by the chairperson who sits in the principal bench and has at least 10 but not more than 20 judicial members. So the minimum requirement of judicial member is 10 while the maximum limit is 20. And same is the case with the expert member. That is, the minimum requirement is 10 while the maximum number of expert member that a bench can consist of is 20. So it is a mix of judicial as well as expert member related to the environmental domain. They are appointed by the central government in consultation with the Chief Justice of India. The eligibility criteria to be appointed as chairperson of NGT can be a person who is or has been a judge of Supreme Court or is or has been a Chief Justice of the High Court. Here, one important detail must be kept in mind, which is related to the tenure of the judicial member as well as the expert member. The NGT Act 2010 says that if a judge of Supreme Court has been appointed as chairperson or judicial member of the tribunal, he shall not hold office after he has attained the age of 70 years. While it says that if a person who is Chief Justice of High Court has been appointed as chairperson or judicial member of the tribunal, he shall not hold office after he has attained the age of 67 years. So while the retiring age for a Supreme Court judge is 70, it is 67 for a High Court judge. Further, it says that no expert member shall hold office after he has attained the age of 65 years. 70 is the age for Supreme Court judge, 67 for the High Court Chief Justice, and for expert member it is 65 year of age. Apart from the age, it also says that the chairperson, judicial member and expert member of the tribunal shall hold office as such for term of 5 years, which is same for all 3 categories from the date on which they enter upon their office, but they shall not be eligible for reappointment. The NGT Act further says that tribunal shall not be bound by the procedure laid down under the Code of Civil Procedure 1908. It has the power of civil court, but it shall be guided by the principle of natural justice, as we have discussed earlier. Now, question arises, who may submit cases to the tribunal and what sort of cases are heard? That is, what all are the acts that are covered under the purview of NGT. Now, Act says that any person seeking relief and compensation for environmental damage involving subjects in the legislations mentioned in Schedule 1 of the NGT Act of 2010 may approach the tribunal. And the statutes covered under Schedule 1 are as follows. The first one is the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974. Second is the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Cess Act 1977. Third is the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Fourth is the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Fifth is the Environment Protection Act of 1986, the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991, and the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Now pay focus here that it does not include the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which is a big demerit. Apart from this, it also does not include Forest Rights Act as well as Indian Forest Act of 1927. Apart from this, the tribunal has jurisdiction over all civil cases involving a substantial question relating to environment, and additionally any person aggrieved by an order, direction of any of the appellate authority under the legislations mentioned above can also challenge them before the National Green Tribunal. Now let us have a look into the issues pertaining to the working of NGT. First is its limited jurisdiction. As you have seen, the purview of NGT does not include the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 or the Indian Forest Act of 1927 as well as FRA Act. This handicaps the NGT to act to protect the flora and fauna as well as the interest of the stakeholders. Second issue is insufficient administrative support, which is caused due to the absence of basic infrastructure and human resource. Now another important issue is NGT has never functioned in full capacity. As you know, there is a requirement of minimum 10 number of judicial and expert member and maximum 20 of judicial and expert member. However, NGT has never got the minimum strength of 10 judicial and 10 expert member to address the increasing number of environmental litigation across the country. On the contrary to the objective of creating a separate court for environmental issue, NGT has proved to be an additional layer to the judicial process, as its order can be challenged in higher courts. Now, in absence of the variety of expert members' decision, especially those related to the quantum of compensation amount to be paid by the polluter, are arrived at without any scientific basis. This has resulted in an increasing number of appeals against NGT's decision in the Supreme Court. Now, a very significant issue pertaining to the working of NGT lies in the implementation of the orders. There is no institutional mechanism to ensure that the environmental regulatory authorities comply with the orders of the tribunal. Now this shows efforts in India have been directed towards diluting the role and function of NGT. Given the current state of the NGT, it is reasonable to claim that the multiple objectives of access to justice, efficiency, cost efficiency, and protection of environment through NGT Act have been defeated. The NGT deserves more attention today than what it has been hitherto. The government of India must realize the risk of pending of thousands environmental litigations in zonal benches to its ambitious economic growth target and policy to lure investors. The government needs to provide adequate financial and human resources if it does not want the NGT to wither away. So that's bring us to the suggestions or the way forward for improving the working and capacity of the NGC. The first suggestion is vacancies should be filled up as early as possible. The vacancies of judges and experts must be filled steadfastly, and experts must be neutral with experience in environmental research and activism. As we have already seen that NGT lacks administrative support, so providing administrative support is of paramount importance. The Wildlife Protection Act and Indian Forest Act along with FRA should be included under the purview of NGT. Now NGT must be given tribunal powers to follow up on the judgment and enforce its judgment for complete justice to take place. Now another suggestion is that NGT must be provided with intra-tribunal appeal. That means the appeal should lie in front of larger bench of NGT instead of taking the case to the higher courts, for example, Supreme Court. Now another suggestion is that Supreme Court must use the special leave jurisdiction under Article 136 sparingly. As HC itself has declared in the past that environmental cases need special expertise, so Supreme Court must refrain from giving orders through the use of Article 136 in the domain of environmental issue. Now, most importantly, more regional benches must be set up with balanced regional spread, and Northeast must get its regional bench as it is an ecologically sensitive area where large developmental work is going on. Apart from these measures, NGT itself must become forthcoming by recognizing organization, experts, activists working in environmental protection and must collaborate with them. Inspiration for this discussion comes from this news which featured on page number 8, that is text and context page of the Hindu newspaper. This article has been written by a renowned author of international relation, that is Stanley Johnny. And this article is related to the effects and impacts of latest negotiation which is going on between Saudi and Iran. Now, if you will look into General Studies paper 2, bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India and or affecting India's interest are mentioned. Apart from this, effects of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, Indian diaspora has been mentioned too. Now, this development is being brokered by China, and this very role of China in this negotiation does affect India's interest manifold. Various aspects related to this negotiation have already been covered in the DNS dated 13th March 2023 by Webhoser. You can refer to that for the better understanding of the issue. However, in this discussion, we will be taking up the author's view regarding following question, that is, what has led to the restoration of diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran? Second, what initially led to the breakdown of the relation? Third, why is the US deprioritizing the West Asian region, and is China emerging as a new great power in West Asia? So let's begin our discussion. Now let us first look into the background of the tension between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now the rivalry between these two regional powers dates back to the pre-Iran revolution era, when these two powers competed with each other for regional dominance. However, the 1979 revolution of Iran became a turning point. It turned the country into a Shia theocratic republic by bringing down the monarchy, while Saudi Arabia remained a Sunni dominant monarchy. In recent times, this rivalry turned into a Cold War with both sides supporting their proxies across West Asia. For example, Iran is backing Shia Houthi rebellion in Yemen. Now, formal ties between them collapsed in 2016, when Saudi embassy in Tehran was overrun by protesters following Saudi's execution of a Shia cleric. Now, under China's mediation, they have agreed to start a new beginning. And if peace holds, it could have far-reaching implications for regional security, stability, and geopolitics. Now, the next question arises, what are the terms of the agreement? Now, according to author, there are no formal details regarding this agreement. And whatever the world knows about this agreement is through various statements made by the officials of both the countries, according to which Iran has agreed to prevent further attacks against Saudi Arabia, especially those from the Houthi-controlled parts of Yemen. In return, Saudi Arabia has agreed to rename Iran International, which is a Farsi newspaper, and Iran has designated it as a terrorist organization. Now the next question on which authors dwells upon is, why did Saudi Arabia and Iran accepted a deal? So first let's discuss why did Saudi Arabia reach out to Iran. According to author, there are two reasons behind this development. First is US deprioritization of West Asia, and due to this, the strategic realignment which is going on in West Asia has been another cause why Saudi Arabia reached out to Iran. Now, what led to US deprioritization of West Asia? There are two main reasons for it. First is the rising challenges in shape of Russia-Ukraine crisis, as well as the rising clout of China in Indo-Pacific. So US wanted to focus more on containing these two challenges rather giving or engaging its resources in West Asia. Apart from this, another reason was that US is now world top producer of oil. So it reduces its dependency on the countries of West Asia, mainly Saudi Arabia. And to expedite this process of deprioritization of West Asia, US wanted two of its main pillars in the region, that is Israel and Arab world, to get closure. Now UAE followed the suit, which along with Bahrain came for the Abraham Accord with Israel. While UAE and Bahrain followed the suit and took a step to normalize ties between them and Israel, Saudi Arabia was slow to move. And by securing this Abraham Accord, USA also reassured that American alliance system in the region would not be disrupted. Now these steps of USA made the Arab countries to realize the twin realities of power vacuum as well as challenges posed by Iran's rise. So they went ahead with the strategic realignment. As you now know that UAE became the first Arab country to normalize relation with Israel. In the following year, Israel and Arab countries deepened their partnership. Now in light of these developments, along with the cold relationship between US and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that is Mohammed bin Salman, 2019 proved to be a watershed moment in Saudi's foreign policy priorities. In this year, Saudi oil facilities were attacked, for which it blamed Iran. However, US looked away and did not respond. This seems to have prompted the Saudis to look for alternative solution for the Iran problem. And finally, the solution they came up with was to reach out to the Iranian itself. Now this is what Saudi Arabia's point of view, what led to Iran to accept the deal. As you know, under the stringent economic sanctions of the Western world, Iran is facing unprecedented economic isolation as well as domestic pressure. And in light of such pressure and critical condition, as per the reports, China has allowed Iran to withdraw $20 billion from its bank despite international sanctions. So while struggling with isolation and sanctions, a deal with Saudi Arabia under China's mediation could open economic lifeline for Iran. And strategically, Iran knows that such a deal could complicate American effort to rally Arab world and Israel against Iran. So economically and strategically, a reconciliation is beneficial for Tehran, at least in tactical sense. So the next question which author dwells upon is, what does China gain from the deal and how does the US look at the deal? Now according to author, unlike the US, which has a history of military interventions in West Asia, China comes with a cleaner record. And with coming of Mohammed bin Salman at the helm of Saudi's affair, US ties with Saudi Arabia faced headwinds in recent years. And it has hostile ties with Iran also. On the contrary, China has warm ties with both the countries because it is a leading buyer of Saudi oil and the largest trading partner of Iran. This allowed China to use its economic leverage to bring parties together. Now China has economic, regional and strategic interest in playing the role of a peace broker in West Asia. If you look at the economic perspective, China is world's largest oil buyer, and stability in the energy market is crucial for its continued rise. If a truce between Saudi Arabia and Iran can offer some stability to West Asia in particular and global energy supplies in general, China stands to benefit from it. Regionally, the agreement marks China's arrival as a major power in West Asia. Now, if you will refer to previous significant accords like Camp David Agreement, Oslo Accord, Abraham Accord, the US was the major influence behind all these accords. However, in this arrangement, US is absent. This points to the larger changes which are going underway in global order. Besides, China is also trying to send a clear message to countries in global south that it is going to be the leader of them. Now the last question that authors look into is how does the US look at the deal? Now at face, US has welcomed this deal. However, in reality, it is watching an ally, that is Saudi, drifting further away, and a rival, that is Iran, making new friends, and its global challenger, that is China, spreading and deepening its influence in a region which the US had dominated since the Suez War of 1956. And in long run, even when it is deprioritizing the region, the US would never like to lose its influence in the West Asia. Inspiration for our next discussion comes from this news which featured on page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper. Now this news is about a fake video case which has its implication in the migration of the laborers from the state of Tamil Nadu. Now recently a video circulated on social media which showed how migrant workers from Bihar are being beaten up in the state of Tamil Nadu. Now in the investigation, this video has come out to be a fake one. Now Bihar police is in hot pursuit of the mastermind of this fake video case. Now fortunately, this case came out as a fake video case. However, such instances are not new for India. There have been several instances in various states of India where attacks on migrant workers happened, which resulted into mass level migration of these laborers to their home state. And as we know, regionalism and the son of soil philosophy is prime reason behind such incidences. So in this discussion, we will be taking up aspects of regionalism in India. As you can trace in your General Studies Paper 1 syllabus, topic of regionalism has been mentioned. Further, if you will look into the previous year UPSC mains question, you will find that UPSC has asked question in 2020 and 2016 based on regionalism. Now here in this discussion, we will look into what are the causes of the regionalism in India. What are the reasons for the regional disparity which becomes the sole cause of regionalism in India? We will also look into the reasons for regional disparity which becomes the cause of regionalism in India. Apart from that, we will also look into the way forward. Now to start with, we must understand what is regionalism. Now India is a large country having continental dimensions and comprising no fewer than 28 states and 8 union territories. It is a multiracial, multilingual nation. There are scores of regional languages, various strains of culture and different loyalties, single as well as multiple. Amidst the amazing diversity, it is natural that regional feeling, regional parties, regional institutions and similar other organizations meant for voicing the aspiration of local people and providing forums for them should emerge. Indeed, with the passage of years, the multifaceted aspirations which together may be described as regionalism have gained strength. It is not a new phenomenon. Now, the growth of this trend can be traced back to the fast unto death Potti Sriramulu over the demand for the creation of Andhra Pradesh, which set in motion the reorganization of a state along linguistic line in 1956. In principle, regionalism need not be regarded as an unhealthy or anti-national phenomena, unless it takes a militant, aggressive turn and encourages the growth of secessionist tendencies. Now, national unity is not impaired if the people of a region have genuine pride in their language and culture. We must understand this difference. But regionalism develops into a serious threat to national unity if politicians do not go beyond their regional loyalty and claim to stand only for their regional interests. If regionalism is to be regarded as an unhealthy phenomenon, decentralization too would be objectionable, which of course it is not. So there is nothing basically contradictory between nationalism and regionalism, nor does the growth of regional values and consolidation of regional forces as such pose a challenge to the central administration of the country. It becomes a matter of concern only when the regionalism crosses the boundary of nationalism. So let us understand what are the causes of regionalism in India. First of all, the geographical factor. Now, the territorial orientation based on geographical boundaries relate to the inhabitants of a particular region, which are symbolic, at least in the Indian context. This is more so because of the linguistic distribution along geographical boundaries. The topographic and climatic variation along with differences in the settlement pattern induce in people the concept of regionalism, as is the case with most of the northeastern state. Now, the second reason is historical and cultural factors. In the Indian scenario, the historical and cultural factors assume greater significance. The historical and cultural components interpret regionalism by way of cultural heritage, folklore, myths, symbolism, and historical traditions. People of a particular cultural group also derive inspiration from the noble deeds and glorious achievements of the local heroes. Nevertheless, there are sudden political and economic realities which can be covered under the gamut of historical and cultural factors, as was the case in the demand of Dravida Nadu and the separation of Andhra Pradesh from the erstwhile Madras state. Now, another important reason is caste and religion. When caste is combined with language conflicts or religious fundamentalism, it breeds regional feeling. It leads to dogmatism and orthodoxy. Now, another important reason is economic factor. Uneven development in many parts of the country may be construed as the prime reason of regionalism and separatism. There are certain regions in the country where industries and factories have been concentrated. Educational and health facilities are adequately provided. Communication network has been developed and rapid agricultural development have been made possible. But there are also certain areas where the worth of independence is yet to be realized in terms of socio-economic development. Now, in case of Jharkhand, Uttarakhand and Chhattisgarh, the demand was mainly based upon the economic factors. All these states argued that they are being ignored when it comes to the developmental aspect. Now, another important reason is politico-administrative factors. Political parties, especially the regional political parties as well as local leaders, exploit the regional sentiments, regional deprivation, and convert them to solidify their factional support bases. They give place to the regional problem in their election manifesto and promise for political and regional development, which again fuels the fire of regionalism, as was the case in Maharashtra, which was done by the Maharashtra Navnirman Sena, that is MNS. So, having seen the causes of regionalism in India, let us look into the main factor which is argued as basis of various demands of regionalism and separatism, that is regional disparity. And what is the reason for regional disparity in India? First is low rate of economic growth. Now, the economic growth of India has been fluctuating since independence. But with the respect to high population growth, the economic growth has been not enough to catch the development with full speed. In the last decade, the economic growth were progressive, but now they are reeling under the influence of world economic crisis and other bottlenecks at domestic level. Now, another reason is socio-economic and political organization of states. The states have been unable to do the adequate land reform and feudal mentality still persists. Bhudan and Gramdan movement after independence were not enthusiastically carried, and even land under land banks were not efficiently distributed. The political activities in the backward states were limited to vote bank politics and scams. Now, another important factor that accentuates regional disparity is lower level of infrastructure facility in backward states. These states have been unable to do the adequate land reform, and the level of infrastructural development such as power distribution, irrigation facilities, road, modern market for agricultural produce has been at backstage. And all these are state subjects. A major reason for regional disparity is low level of social expenditure by states on education, health, and sanitation. These subjects are core for human resource development. The states which have invested heavily on these subjects fall under the developed and advanced states. For example, Tamil Nadu, where healthcare service in primary health center is a benchmark for other states. Now lastly, political and administrative failure has been another reason for regional disparity in India. And this is source of tension and gives birth to sub-regional movements for separate states. As we have seen, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand and recently Telangana are result of these failures only. And many such demands are in pipelines such as Vidarbha, Saurashtra, Bodoland and Darjeeling. Now let us discuss some suggestive measures or the way forward. The first and foremost important thing is to do away with the regional imbalances. The developmental process should be inclusive and must reach to all the strata of the society. There should be an stringent check on the regional political parties and their frivolous demands. Top priority to the economic development of deprived zones should be given. Means of transport and communication should be developed at priority. Proper education and its inclusiveness should be maintained. Appeal through the medium of mass media and social media should be made. Creation of enough employment opportunity, especially in backward regions, should be maintained. Government must provide special packages to backward states so that they should not feel delineated from the developmental process. Another important measure is a special category status to bifurcated states in India as they lack tools and resources for their desired level of development. And last but not the least, measures should be taken to improve the national integration process and efforts should be made so that demands of regionalism should remain well within the contours of nationalism. Now there are some other important news which featured in the Hindu newspaper and which have already been covered in previous session of DNS. As this report about India's remaining world's largest importer of arms, which has been highlighted by latest CIPRI report and appeared on page number 11 of the Hindu newspaper. Now this information can be used as fodder. However, defense indigenization becomes an important theme from this news. And the topic of defense indigenization has been covered in the DNS session of 11th January 2023. Another important news which featured on page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper was related to CJI referring petitions on same-sex marriage to Constitution Bench. Now topic of same-sex marriage has been covered in detail in previous edition of DNS dated 13th March 2023. Now this article which featured on page number 6 of the Hindu newspaper talks about the recent draft bill on Digital India. And this aspect of this bill has been covered in detail in 13th March edition of the DNS 2023. So you can refer following DNS to make understanding about these three topics. That's all for today. Stay tuned for more such updates.